Questions. Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, my question is to the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, too many Territory women have lost their lives to domestic and family violence. Too many Territory women, young people and children are subjected to violence in their everyday lives. This issue is above politics. Territory Labor is proposing a bipartisan delegation to Canberra comprising of members of the CLP government, Territory Labor opposition and the crossbench, standing alongside victim survivors, DFSB experts and frontline workers to collectively advocate for needs-based funding for the Northern Territory. Chief Minister, will you agree to lead this delegation so that our frontline services across the Northern Territory have the resources that they need to combat family, domestic and sexual violence across the Northern Territory?
Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I thank the Opposition Leader for the question. And of course, a very important topic that we're debating extensively in the Parliament today, given the coroner's recommendations that were handed down yesterday. And it's very important, and Opposition Leader talks about leadership. Within 2 weeks of being in government, Madam Speaker, I was down in Canberra with the Prime Minister, with National Cabinet, championing this very issue for needs-based funding for the Territory. The percentage we're being allocated just isn't going to cut it. In fact, it will barely touch the sides. And to have Senator McCarthy on TV this morning, essentially saying that the Territory's got to do their fair share isn't fair, because there has been a bipartisan commitment to the $180 million to go into dealing with this issue. And of course, we're very committed to working with the opposition and, in fact, any members of the Parliament who are looking to try and imprint upon the Commonwealth just how important their role is in the Territory. So, yes, Opposition Leader, I've got no problem with anything that you've proposed. We're very happy to do that. We're very mindful, of course, as well, that we have a Labor federal government, and you've just come out of government in the last 8 years, Opposition Leader, and if you haven't been able to yield an outcome after 8 years with your own Labor mates in the top job in Canberra, I can only imagine our efforts will be in vain. But we're willing to try everything. We're certainly doing what we can in this short space of time we've had. And Minister Carl has been doing a power of work in this space to make sure that what we're spending money on is actually going to be going towards making people safer. And so I might actually hand my question over to Minister Carl. I know she's made her ministerial report today, but as the Portfolio Minister, she can speak more to what our concerns are around the corona and what we're doing going forward. But I've got no issue with what's being proposed.
Minister Carl.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll just make the note that I think it is absolutely vital that we do not rush a response. The coroner took 17 months to complete the work on this inquest, and there are, as has been noted already today, 35 recommendations. To rush forward and not give those recommendations the consideration they deserve would be irresponsible. To not go out to the community and consult with the community and workers and service providers on the ground as the best way forward would also be irresponsible. I was actually heartened at a meeting I just held in the lunch break with the National Commissioner for Domestic, Family and Sexual Violence, who advised me that she felt that our approach forward to take a moment, to take a review and take a step back was a wise one, and that is absolutely what we will do.
Your time's up. Opposition.
Madam Speaker, my question is to the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, on the 5th of November, you told media that you would be campaigning for needs-based funding to tackle the Northern Territory's domestic and family violence crisis. You also said you would honour the former Territory Labor government's additional $180 million investment into this national shame. Yesterday, the Northern Territory coroner handed down a report into the tragic deaths of 4 Territory women and called for urgent action on domestic and family violence. Frontline Services, Chief Minister, are yet to see a single cent from your government for the needs that they have called for. You've been in government now for 13 weeks, just over 3 months. Chief Minister, what are you going to do when you told Territorians that you were serious about tackling family and domestic violence?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And of course, this was a commitment first made by the then Labor government and then the CLP. And so if money hasn't been spent, Opposition Leader, I think you need to find a mirror and take a good hard look. because the reality is your government had 8 years to do something about this, and instead all they did was increase domestic violence by 82%. So if you made hollow promises, opposition leader, that's on you. You've served as Attorney General, as Health Minister and a range of other portfolios, as has your team. What we're doing is not what you did. And we are very, very clear about status quo not being an option for our government. And so Minister Carl has shown exceptional leadership on this issue, and the critics can come out and decry us all they want. At the end of the day, what matters to us is that Territorians are safe, that our actions speak louder than our words, and that the finite resources of Territory taxpayers' dollars is spent to go as far as humanly possible to achieve better outcomes for our people. That at its core is what we want to achieve. And so we're not really interested in all of the semantics around this issue and whatever hype and hyperbole you want to bring to it, opposition leader. The facts remain that in the last 8 years, domestic violence has gone through the roof. We've already acted to strengthen the law. And come January, when our bail reform kicks in, that will be even more important, because we know that domestic violence perpetrators are often repeat offenders, that our prison has got plenty of DV offenders in it, and there are more strong action that we need to take in this space, coupled with, and obviously wearing my police minister hat to that extent, coupled with the work then that the Department of Children and Families under the leadership of Minister Carl has to do around dealing with the expenditure of that money prudently. We've talked already today, there is a ministerial report before the House on this very topic. Minister Carl has very clearly explained we will not rush to make judgment on the recommendations. We will take our time as the coroner took her time to deliberate. We will make sure that the action plan that Labor prepared is actually going to deliver outcomes, because I'm not standing here, Madam Speaker, because Territorians wanted me to deliver Labor's plan. I'm standing here as Chief Minister because Territorians wanted me to deliver the CLP's plan with my team. And that is exactly what we're doing. And so people can talk a lot about this issue and try and use it to politicise the issue or even make themselves look more important than they really are. I don't mind which one of those categories you sit in, opposition leader, but what we won't do is rush, waste Territorians' money and put the lives of more women at risk.
Member for Wanguri.
My question is to the Minister for Prevention of Domestic Violence. Minister, in the findings of the coroner, the deaths of the 4 Territory women, the coroner identified alcohol as a contributing factor to the frequency and severity of domestic violence assaults, and particularly provided a recommendation 5. Minister, do you support your government's removal of the minimum floor price, proven alcohol harm reduction strategy, which has been found to reduce domestic violence assaults, which has also been researched by an independent health research with Menzies School of Health?
Minister for the Prevention of Domestic Violence.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The wonderful thing about research and statistics and figures is you can pretty much make them say whatever you want.
Oh my God!
The fact is that the questions that are asked around volume of alcohol being consumed do not take into account the alcohol content of the alcohol being consumed. And I can tell you from personal experience, having witnessed the changes that occurred after the floor price was introduced, that I went from dealing with, on a day-to-day basis, blown up pillows being left around the service that I used to have responsibility for, to picking up smashed and broken bottles, to dealing with broken people, to dealing with injuries and damage. There were so many things introduced at the same time that it would be impossible to know which of all of those things were the most effective. But we do know from experience that the introduction of police into bottle shops has been very effective. Before that, pallies. What we also know is that Labor deliberately avoided checking compliance with the minimum unit price. 45 let me say that again, 45 grocery store liquor licences in the Northern Territory were never once checked by an inspector to ensure that the conditions imposed under the minimum unit price were actually being complied with. Available data highlights that the increases in consumption of higher content alcohol.
Take your seat. Leader of the Opposition, what is your point of order?
Speaker, 110 relevance. The question was to the Minister, does she support her government's scrapping of the minimum floor price unit?
I think she's answering it, but I'll let her continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So available data highlights increases in consumption of higher content alcohol products with a 17% increase in standard spirits, a 36% increase in mixed spirits since the minimum unit price was introduced. There are no measurable benefits. There is no benefit to the minimum unit price in relation to the floor price for alcohol. Alcohol-related assaults have increased by 38% in the past 8 years under Labor. So clearly, the processes that were implemented are not helping. People aren't drinking less. Money is not the issue. They have changed what they drink. They have moved from soft boxes to hard spirits. They have moved to glass bottles, which are now weapons. What we need is real change, real impact, real effect, and the MUP was not it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for the Prevention of Domestic Violence. Minister, the Coroner Elizabeth Armitage has called for immediate action to address domestic and family violence. The domestic and family violence sector has called on you to immediately roll out the $180 million additional investment announced. Minister, your response is that you are auditing the Northern Territory Domestic Violence Framework, a framework that was created by experts, by victim survivors, by the sector. Minister, you have said that you are going to audit this, rather than listening to the sector and funding the implementation, rather than auditing an audit. Minister, can you explain to frontline services why you aren't providing desperately needed funding to them right now to protect Territory women and children? Why are you auditing an audit that they were involved in?
Minister for Prevention of Domestic Violence.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The very first thing I did in my role as Minister for Children's and Families, Child Protection and Prevention for Domestic Violence was go out and talk to frontline workers, to go out and speak to service providers, to go out and hear firsthand what is happening on the ground. I then posed the question to the department, how are we sure that these programs are working when all I can see is a tragic increase in the incidence of domestic violence assaults in our community? How can we possibly say what we are doing is working when all we can see is damage, broken families? And how can we say what we are doing is working when we continue to lose valuable members of our community, mums, sisters, grandmas, aunties, when we have lost 8 more people since June this year? It is unforgivable to then step back and say, we'll just keep doing what we've always done. It is shameful. But to do more, you have to first know what you are doing works, where it's not working, why it's not working, and where can you improve the outcomes. I asked how we were measuring, and the response was, well, we don't. And then I did some research and found that the framework actually says in the framework that you are touting as the answer to the prayer of the previous government, it is not feasible, cost-effective, or appropriate to formally evaluate all aspects of the domestic family sexual violence framework, but review is required, particularly of key components. That is written into the actual framework. That is shameful. I cannot think of a single
Take your
circumstance.
seat, Minister. What's your point of order, Member for Gwaja?
Point of order, Madam Speaker. 110 relevance. There is an evaluation. It's being undertaken at the moment. You might want to find the facts and figures of your own department.
Member for Gwaja, take your seat. That's not a point of order. Continue, Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I cannot think of a single circumstance where it's okay to continue to operate programs that aren't able to be evaluated properly. I can't think of a single circumstance where it's okay to continue to progress things that are not working on the ground, and I cannot think of a single circumstance where it's okay to progress recommendations where you haven't actually sat down with the people who may have to follow through on those and asked them for their input and their support and their advice.
Member for
Speaker, my question is for the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, under your proposed Territory Coordinator Bill, you tried to sneak past Territorians, by the way, you plan to give yourself step-in powers to make statutory decisions in place of relevant ministers. Why do you need these unprecedented additional powers, Chief Minister, and which of your ministers do you not trust to make decisions?
Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'm glad to get a question on the Territory Coordinator because it is such an important piece of reform, and I think the bit that Labor don't understand, or I suppose the bits that Labor don't understand, is that status quo is going to deliver us more nothing, which is what Labor delivered. More debt, no projects, no jobs. So this is a model that's been taken, the good bits have been taken from South Australia, from Queensland, where other jurisdictions are forging ahead to make themselves more competitive. And what the Territory Coordinator legislation does is allows a sequence of decision-making to escalate as the need arises. So, for example, and I've used this example on radio before and in other public forums, but if you wanted to build a large-scale solar farm or any solar farm, you would need various types of permits and approvals. You would need to get a land clearing permit, you might need to get a water licence, you might need to get a non-pastoral use permit. All of those different processes and permits require different consultation, expenditure, time, energy, and one often has to precede the other, and so you get big blowouts in time delay. What the Territory Coordinator can do is recognise, okay, Project A wants to build a solar farm. What approvals do they need? Okay, 3 of them require public consultation. We're going to allow one big piece of community consultation to take place in replace of the 3 separate ones on all 3 topics. Now, that's just smart. It's efficient. It's competitive. It allows us to move through processes properly and prudently and bring the community on those journeys and give people all of their rights to have their say without the excessive delay and cost and duplication. That's exactly what we've been elected to deliver. Reducing crime, rebuilding the economy, restoring our lifestyle. 3 things we took to the election. This is the flagship on rebuilding our economy. And so we're not going to apologise for going out to 3 months exhaustive public consultation where everyone can have their say, including the people who stood out the front and protested this morning that the sky's falling down if we do things a bit differently in the Territory. They can have their say as well, and we'll hear them out. And then after that, the Scrutiny Committee, of which Labor is a member, and the crossbench can also then have another go at it. This thing will be well ventilated, and I'm proud of that because we are absolutely committed to driving the economic reform the Territory needs. There does need to be an escalation of powers, and the point really is to never have to use them. It's a carrot and stick model deliberately designed to put decision-making back in the hands of our public service and making it easier for them to be more agile and responsive. But where we need to increase, we will, because the Territory's future is too important to ignore.
Supplementary, Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, supplementary to the Chief Minister, the Territory Coordinator position, as you've outlined, will go through a set of processes. Can you assure Territorians that processes such as the Sacred Sites Act will not be overlooked by the Territory Coordinator position?
Chief Minister.
Yep, that's all. You mustn't have read my guide to the Territory Coordinator Opposition Leader, because it's very clear legislation that's been exempted from consideration. And what we have is an overarching primary principle of this legislation around from prioritising something. So it might just be that the Territory Coordinator directs a prioritisation of a particular project because of its significance. It might then ask for a progress update on that decision-making process to give the nudge, like, I'm watching this, you need to move faster, please give me a progress update. Then they might ask for a decision, so they might say, okay, I've asked you to do this, you're not hurrying up, can you please make the decision by a certain amount of time?
Point of order.
Around specifically the Sacred Sites Act, and would that be overlooked or not?
Yes, please answer the question, Minister.
Yep, it's all exempted from the Territory Coordinator legislation. The bit we've got out to consultation is whether or not people think heritage should be in.
My question is for the Minister for Police. Minister, last week it was reported that an NT police officer was back on duty after charges relating to the death of his partner were dropped. Her death was caused by an untreated head injury that required some form of trauma, likely a hit to the head. There were many disturbing elements about this case that were reported, including that in the 5 years before her death, 17 domestic violence complaints were made in the 5 years to the police. The victim had documented in her diary and emails the physical abuse he was committing. She felt there was, quote, no point reporting her abuse by her partner to the NT police because, quote, he would be informed of the complaint and she would have to deal with the consequences. The coroner in her death criticised the decision not to establish a crime scene after her death, saying the word of a fellow police officer weighed more heavily than it should. And the coroner also said domestic violence perpetrated by serving police officers is considered to be a significant issue and police appear to struggle with investigating their own members. Minister, does the NT police have a problem with their attitudes regarding men's violence to women? And can women, particularly women whose partners are in the police force, feel safe to report DV to the NT police?
Minister for Police.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Nightcliff for the question. Speaking to your generic questions at the end, member, our police force is a strong and important institution to the Territory, and I stand by them as they do their work in making our community safe. Now, you've raised a number of allegations and matters of which I don't have the detail, but what I can say is, of course, like any institution, there's a continuous journey of improvement and reform across a range of areas, and we've seen many of them play out publicly for our police. If you're after something from me, some form of public condemnation, you're not going to get it. Could there be areas for improvement? I'm sure there could be, just like anywhere else. But I don't have the detail that you're seeking, and I certainly stand by our police force who work hard every single day doing an incredibly difficult job. They leave their families every day to go and protect ours, and for that they have my utmost respect. Their commitment to the Territory is profound, and the role they have to play now while crime is totally out of control is more important than ever before. So I commend our police for the good work they do. I can't speak to the issues you've raised, but certainly, I think if you're going to come into this parliament and make widespread allegations, you better have your facts straight.
Member for...
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, you've staked the CLP's economic credibility on giving yourself and an unelected bureaucrat unprecedented power to interfere in good governance in Northern Territory projects. You told the media you would give the Territory Coordinator, quote, a wink, end quote, when you want him to step in on a project. Chief Minister, will you be upfront and tell Territorians which projects you intend to give the Territory Coordinator a wink about when you want him to bypass important legislative and statutory and regulatory safeguards?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I think it really shows the level of or lack of depth we've got on the other side. Not only have they not read the bill or the exposure document that we consulted on that they tabled in Parliament, nor have they read the guide. We even wrote a guide to the bill for those who don't want to digest the legislation. They could read the very easy to read plain speak guide.
Take your seat. She's only been on her feet, 24 seconds. What is your point of order?
Speaker, just to clarify, we tabled the consultation paper,
that's not a point of order. Do not interrupt the Minister. She's got the call.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That's what makes it even more embarrassing, because you tabled it and you didn't read it. You didn't understand it. You still don't understand it, and you even just asked me a question about whether it would include sacred sites, which it does not. The discussion paper said it wouldn't include sacred sites. The bill says it doesn't include sacred sites. The guide says it doesn't include sacred sites, and you still ask me. So I would suggest, just as a matter of good governance, as you called it, to do your homework. Read the documentation. It doesn't include sacred sites, heritage, or Aboriginal land rights. We're asking people for their feedback on heritage.
Can you just sit down? Enough chitter-chatter from over here. My left ear works incredibly well, unfortunately, so I can hear it all. So let's focus on what the Chief Minister's answer is.
The member for Barclay's just offered a briefing. I don't think it's going to help. You either have to want to learn or you don't. And I think the questions we've received today speak volumes. Like I've said, we're really proud of the Territory Coordinator. It's going to be the most consulted on, well-ventilated piece of economic we've seen in a decade, Madam Speaker, and we're incredibly proud to be delivering a more competitive Territory. It's perfectly in line with our vision for the Territory. We've made payroll tax. We've made the Territory the most attractive jurisdiction in the country on payroll tax. From 1 January, 200 more small businesses will say goodbye to those bills, and we will lift that threshold, making us an attractive place to do business here. We've got the most competitive home builders scheme in the country. Again, making the Territory the most competitive place to build a home. This is exactly what the course we're charting for the Territory. That's the work we've been doing over the last 13 weeks. And I can tell you the amount of work that's gone into the Territory Coordinator legislation is huge. And I take that opportunity to thank my department. Department of Chief Mins have really led the charge on this. They've been out there engaging with all of the other agencies who are as excited about this as we are, providing all of their feedback. Because you know what, Opposition Leader, Territorians want change. That's why there's been a change of government. They're sick and tired of being told about projects that are going to happen that never happen. They're sick and tired of being told that crime's a figment of their imagination. They're just sick of it. What they want is leadership and change. That's exactly what we're delivering. You can have your say, just like everyone else, but go and read the guide and do us all a favour. Find out what you're talking about.
Member for Goyder.